Hello, everybody. I'm your lovely host, Toast. Welcome back to the Crumb Scale. Today, I will be talking about the latest in the Walking With franchise, Walking with Dinosaurs 2025. Now, I know that this series is a little controversial within the fan base of Paleo Media and Walking With as a whole, but that did not stop me from holding out hope that maybe this would be entertaining, at least good, or maybe at least somewhat informational. And the reasons why a lot of people do not like this newer series, I can understand, but I do think people need to realize that in 2013, Walking With made a jump to the cinemas with Walking with Dinosaurs 2013, and in that movie, a lot of stuff that happens in the newer show happens there. Not the talking dinosaurs, though, luckily. That is not something that they carried over. What I mean, though, is in Walking with Dinosaurs 2013, the movie, they have modern day segments and they have little freeze things to like explain stuff about like, oh, this is something that dinosaurs have and all that, instead of naturally doing it like a lot of other documentaries and the old Walking With did. So this didn't surprise me when BBC and PBS showcased that there were going to be modern day segments, because that is where the franchise left off last we saw it, and it was always going to head that direction, at least from what we could tell from the latter few shows. Kinda like Walking with Caveman, it was a little bit there, but it was still like the other shows. So yeah, with that out of the way, we can get going to the overall series. As I mentioned earlier, this remake season 2 thing was made by BBC, obviously, and PBS. It was narrated not by the original narrator, whose name I cannot remember, but this one was narrated by Bertie Carvel. If I'm saying that wrong, please let me know. Yeah, so I don't really have much I can say about who made this show. For all I know, it's made by a lot of the same people that made the original, all that, but I don't know. But the production on this show is a little mixed. Some moments creature movement feels very wrong and stiff, and then other moments it feels very nice and smooth. Overall, though, the models on everything, the skin texture can be a bit weird sometimes. It looks like some textures are stretched occasionally, and the overall shading looks downright awful almost all the time. Oh, wait. Okay, never mind. Going back to earlier, there is another thing that I realized looking at a lot of the newer Walking With stuff. It is filmed a lot like more, what would you call it? Sophisticated documentaries, where they don't really like have much shaky cam and all that. And because, big budget means, oh, we got to make this cinematic, but you don't need to. The charm with documentaries is that most of the time, they're not perfect in quality. So I think that's one thing that majorly threw off a lot of people, is this is not filmed like an older documentary. It is filmed like it is. But yeah, now we can move on to individual episodes. Episode 1 is titled The Orphan. This is an episode about an orphaned Triceratops that is being constantly followed, I think, if I remember correctly, by a Tyrannosaur, which gets a little old. This episode was a decent start to the series. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was alright. But it covered a lot of stuff that we already knew if you watched the original Walking With. If you didn't, I guess this is informative. But yeah, we do get some neat stuff, like Triceratops. There's this one, I think it's like a a lone wolf triceratops. It stands up to a T-Rex, and like its frill gets all like big and colorful from blood rushing to it, which is something that we've seen before in things like Prehistoric Park and all that, which is a fun idea. I don't know how real it is, but you know. In this episode, the perfect example of animal movement varying in quality is perfectly shown in this one scene that they themselves showed to the public before it was even out, and a lot of people, including myself, thought it was unfinished and maybe they were using like an older version of the footage. No, that's how it looks in the show. The Tyrannosaurus sneaks up on an Asdarkid pterosaur and it kills it, obviously. And as it does this, its entire body, including the tail, moves like a Lego figure, where it's just stiff. And it looks so incredibly goofy. It ends like a couple seconds later, and then the movement goes back to like somewhat normal. But yeah, in this episode, you very much see the state of what you're going to be watching in terms of like quality, variation and quality, because the lighting changes randomly and it sometimes looks awful. Like I mentioned just now, the animation quality changes, and yeah, that's pretty much that. For the first episode, I decided to rate it, so I'm going to be rating each individual episode for this, which is a little new for me since I haven't covered a series yet on the Crumb scale, so I hope you'll stay with me. My rating for episode 1 is a 5 out of 10, because of the facts that I've just mentioned. You know, info we already knew, some new info, but not really. And the modern day segments are just they really kind of just suck. I'm so sorry to the paleontologists or like anybody who worked on this. I don't hate you. I just hate how your show is made. Well, I don't hate it, I should say. It just bothers me. Like, some of the way they talk about certain things makes it sound like what the story they're telling is factual, 100% what happened. And then at the end of the episode, there's this thing where, like, the Rex supposedly kills the Triceratops, but then it's, like, revealed, because, like, throughout the entire episode, they're showing you information to, like, explain what's happening in the story. But then they're like, oh, well, we don't really know what happens. Like, we don't know if the baby died or not. Like, then it might have died later. And so then it shows the baby's like still alive, and it's like, what's the point in even acting like it died if you're just gonna do that? It feels forced, pretty much. But that's enough for episode 1. Moving on to episode 2. If I remember correctly, it is called The River Dragon. And I'm going to have to really, really push aside my own love of Spinosaurus, because Spinosaurus is my favorite dinosaur, and this episode is about Spinosaurus, so I will try and keep biases out. So, yeah, this episode, The River Dragon, I am giving a 7 out of 10 without bias. If I was to give it a bias, I would probably bump it up to an 8, but yeah. So the thing about this episode, right? This episode is about a Spinosaurus father taking his babies, basically. Like, I don't know. I don't know if they have like a word for it or whatever. Just baby Spinosaurus, his family. He's taking them on this, like, journey throughout the Chem to get food. And in this episode is the only episode in this entire series where they can say stuff that doesn't sound repetitive and actually important information to give. Because, okay, trying to avoid a major tangent, 2025, in my opinion, has been the worst year for Spinosaurus. Anytime there was hopes for a decent Spinosaurus this year, it has been crushed immensely by multiple factors. Unfortunately, I will have to list some of these unfortunate examples. First one being Jurassic World Rebirth, the next being Primitive War, which the only major problems that one has is the face, like the head is wrong, and the body is too crocodilian, obviously, but that's a stylized choice, and it's just a nitpick. And anything else with Spinosaurus has just not been good this year. So this episode is surprisingly the only good thing for Spinosaurus to come out all year, and maybe for the past few years, because it gives an updated look. The only problem being that it swims really fast. The thing about Spinosaurus swimming, we don't really know. It keeps changing constantly, but my personal belief is it probably hunted on the shoreline and maybe swam to travel, not really hunt. In this episode, it hunts and all that, but they do the thing where most documentaries do, where some are sitting on the shore and some are swimming, so that's like to balance it out. But yeah, we don't know. We don't know if this thing swam or not, but oh well. The Spinosaurus design, as you can probably tell from my ranting, is perfect in this series. Besides, I wish there could be a little bit more color and all that, but oh well. Unfortunate things about this episode. In marketing, the artist who made the Spinosaurus art traced a lot of models and toys, almost exact, so that was a bit unfortunate. And something about this episode I did not expect. This is probably the first thing in like nearly 2 decades to have a good Carcharodontosaurus design. So, as you people watching probably know, I used to be involved with FA, and I'm still friends with the devs. One of those friends being Dip. Hi, Dip, if you're watching this. He despises Carcharodontosaurus, but he saw the design in this, and he can agree with me that this design is really good. It nearly gaslit us into thinking Carchar was a cool dinosaur. It's such a wonderful design, and probably one of the best designs from this newer show, which I'm so glad for, because it finally gives me a reason to stick to something from this show that I can think about when I think about a certain dinosaur that isn't Spinosaurus. But yeah, they show some really nice behavior where they don't say like, oh, Spinosaurus was like, it didn't really want conflict. Like, it's still a big carnivore. And when it meets up, like, when it tries to eat this sauropod corpse that the Carchar has like claimed, it avoids conflict, yeah, but it's not because it's like, oh, I can't do anything here. It's because it doesn't want to, like, you know, get fatally injured because it has to take care of its family and all that, and it's not desperate yet. Like, it's an animal. It's just a creature that can think, hey, I'm not going to fight even though I can. I'm just going to go somewhere else, which it does, and it leads to the next segment where there's an Asdarkid in the forest. I personally think it's a really fun segment, although the behavior in it is a little unbelievable, and I unfortunately have to agree with Dib that if you're not looking at it for fun, it's very stupid. But yeah, moving on, since I don't want to rant on too long. In this episode, they have a time-traveling, I think, Diplocaulus in the river scene where it's swimming. And I unfortunately have to point this out. People have been dogging on the show for this when it makes no sense purely because of the fact that walking with the franchise and most other documentaries do time traveling things all the time. Now, to explain what I mean very quickly, certain series will have creatures that have already died or haven't exist with other things so that they can move the story along in an interesting way. Sometimes being forced, sometimes being like, oh, it's just there, kind of like the Kulasuchus in the original Walking with Dinosaurs. Here, it's not a problem because it's not even a main focus. It's in the background. It's not the end of the world. It's just something there. So for this episode, the score, as I mentioned earlier, is a 7 out of 10. And the next episode, which is called A Band of Brothers, I'm unfortunately going to have to put at a 4 out of 10 because this is an episode where it kind of confusing. If I remember correctly, there's no evidence of Utah raptor hunting ankylosaurids, and in this episode they show them doing that. But the thing is, in certain cases, it doesn't really make sense, and sometimes it feels like the ankylosaurs aren't doing that much. But yeah, it's overall episode is just kind of it's neat. It gives the Utah Raptors a new design that isn't their old scaly one. But geez, you can see the problem. Moving on though, the next episode is The Pack. If I remember correctly, I gave this one a 5 out of 10. The reason why is because this is the episode where I started to realize they're going to repeat stuff a lot because of the area that they're doing a lot of these episodes in that isn't the Chem share a lot of stuff, and a lot of the creatures in the series are either related or share similarities. So it's kind of just weird, and in the end it's it's just an episode about Albertosaurus, pretty much. The next episode is The Journey North. This is about a herd of Pachyrhinosaurus, so I could base this on my opinion of the 2013 movie, because this is basically like a new version of that story, but not really. It's alright. I gave it like a 5. No, I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. And now I know why I gave it a 4.5 instead of like a 5. It is because I kind of forgot that this episode existed. It is genuinely that forgettable, and I don't think I was paying attention fully when I watched it. So, yeah. Oh yeah, also, the main creature of this episode is called Albie, which is the dumbest name I have ever heard for a dinosaur. I am sorry. And the last episode is Island of Giants, which I gave a 3 out of 10. And it is because this episode dragged on for so long. I couldn't sit through it fully if, I wasn't trying to. It was so stupid. The animal behavior in it was weird. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it was just weird. One of the, sauropods is, laying on a beach, and there's a Torvosaurus there. And you would have expected the Torvo to eat it while it was asleep, right? No, it just sits there. It just lets it get back up. So it's like, why even have it there? It's just a weird choice of storytelling. And in the end, they show the neat speculative biology that every paleo documentary is doing now, with air sacs on sauropods, but this one does it in a weird way. It doesn't look appealing in any sense. which I mean, I guess makes sense. It's like, oh, some animals don't look appealing. It's just how they're made, but this one just is gross, genuinely. Um, Now that I got that out of the way, uh, where it sits on the Crumb scale, I will have to be giving Walking with Dinosaurs 2025 a 45 out of 100. While it is not bad in any sense, it certainly is not good, since one episode by itself was the only worth it thing while watching, and that is episode 2. Genuinely the only episode that is worth watching out of this new season series thing. So yeah, that's gonna be it for my review on Walking with Dinosaurs 2025. Final words. I hope the people who worked on this can continue working with studios further on down the line. I really hope this was just a case of bad timing and bad leadership decisions, but it's just gonna sit there. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sitting through my little rant. That's gonna be all. Bye bye.